In 1999, there were a lot of games on the Sony PlayStation. Games about jumping on platforms, games about playing with friendly animals, and exciting cinematic experiences where you got to think about what it might be like to play a game, while instead learning important lessons about genetics and military geopolitics. But we can reach a little deeper than these games. If we peel back the curtain just a little bit, the PlayStation's library holds all kinds of wild, expressive titles. The one I want to talk about today is a little game by Sony Computer Entertainment Studios called Ape Escape. Being as it is an enduring classic that went on to earn its place in video games history, I'm quite sure the scholars among you know all about the plot of Ape Escape, like it was an old friend. But for the younger members of the audience that haven't had the pleasure, I'll give you a quick rundown. The story follows our protagonist Spike and his best friend Buzz as they run joyfully down the road in their loosely defined hometown so that they can go and meet their friend the cool professor, who has just finished work on his time device. But when they arrive, disaster! Both the professor and his assistant Katie have been tied up by a horde of monkeys. A monkey with brilliant white fur and a menacing grin gives the order, and despite the protests of the bound and gagged, the time machine is activated. When the smoke clears, the professor is jubilant about his success, and mostly pretty unconcerned about the fact that he's just sent two school-age boys who presumably, trusted him, hurtling across the reaches of time itself. It's at this point that the game begins in earnest. It's a fairly familiar structure of expansive 3D levels in a variety of time periods where you just gotta catch those pesky apes. I want to take a minute here to just appreciate the quality of the construction of this game. Ape Escape did some extremely cool things with an ailing PlayStation, and makes a lot of early PS2 games look pretty uninventive by comparison. Rather than controlling the camera, which before you ask is awful, the right analog stick controls whatever cool gadget you've got in your hand. You start off swinging lightsabers and nets to catch monkeys in, before graduating to spinning a handheld helicopter and even piloting a tiny RC car. Ever generous, the game keeps on giving, and later on you get to row boats and pilot other fun vehicles, all by working those dual analog sticks. It's a very economical use of the DualShock controller, and the kind of inventive control design that you didn't see much of back then and still don't really see much of today. So, from the comfort of your cool sci-fi time station, you blaze a trail of captured monkeys across the eons, and are rewarded with new, more exciting tools for your performance. Each one immediately recontextualizes earlier areas and encounters. You see the world differently through the windows of your RC car than you did through your normal human eyes. "That monkey on the island!" you wildly cry, realizing that with your shiny new helicopter you can fly over to the island to catch them. Maybe you'll use your RC car to chase a monkey out of the hole they're hiding in, or maybe you'll shoot them off a vine they're climbing on. This is a pretty rewarding and satisfying loop, and on the whole it carries the game fairly well. And then you meet Spectre. Spectre, who the eagle-eyed among you will remember from the opening as the de facto leader and instigator of this here Ape Escape, is the villain of the piece. Your very first actions in the game are to begin imprisoning his foot soldiers and putting a stop to his plans, sending apes through time to rewrite history. But this presentation, like a lot of Ape Escape's basic narrative, is a subtle misdirection. Spectre's motivation, as you can see on the game's attract screen if you leave the start menu for long enough, is that one day he found a helmet with a lamp on top, and putting it on gave him super intelligence and forced him to permanently make that face they make on the cover of every video game released in the last 10 years. This helmet is called the Peak Point helmet, and it'll come up later, so keep it in mind. Then, pretty much immediately, he's leading a charge of monkeys with their own helmets out of the amusement park, straight to the only time machine in town. He is directly confronted roughly 3 times over the course of the story, and is criticized by the other authority figures in the game for his actions leading the apes to escape. But there's something unusual about how the sympathetic cast of the game treat him in these interactions. Every single time the protagonists try to appeal to him to end his rebellion, their words fall flat. Why? Because the people positioning themselves as mediating voices of reason in this story only ever really ask him to stop. It's variously justified by these characters that the helmet is dangerous or that he's being unnecessarily destructive. But the general feel of the conversations is that it's just obviously bad that Spectre is doing what he's doing, and that if he was truly smart he would see that what he was doing was folly and surrender. The only logical conclusion is to renounce the helmet, not only his own, but those of all of his monkeys, because access to them does far more harm than good. So, does it? What then is the Peak Point helmet? It's the catalyst for the events of the plot, and every monkey has one, but its abilities are never fully explained, so we can only really infer what it does by the ways in which a monkey changes when wearing one, and the results are pretty stark. The very first monkeys you see, who, bear in mind you have to catch, are nothing like the monkeys you see at an everyday zoo at the turn of the millennium. First of all, they wear shorts to cover themselves in an obvious reference to Adam and Eve's expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Keen Bible readers among you will recognize this event as the result of the two of them eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Scholars are divided on what exactly Adam and Eve learned from this experience, but it was enough to get them kicked out of paradise, while simultaneously equipping them to survive in the harsh world outside, hence contemporary humanity. The equipment to live outside is evident in the behaviour of the apes too, as the monkeys are seen to not only have diversified personalities and habits to cope with their newly socialised existence, but also have acquired actual defensive technologies, ranging from martial arts to boxing gloves to, automatic weapons? These apes have adapted to life outside in a matter of what for them can only be days, and they like what they see so much that they're ready to fight to defend it. A final feature of the peak point helmet is contained here, in only a few frames of the attract screen. The very first event of the story is Spectre donning the helmet for the first time. The next thing that happens is that the monkeys have escaped, and every single one is wearing a peak point helmet. Spectre's immediate reaction to gaining genius-level intellect and an awareness of the oppressive structure surrounding him is to pass on that knowledge to his fellow monkeys. In this seconds-long scene transition before the game has even begun, the game's ostensible villain demonstrates more compassion for others than the protagonists do over the next 10 hours, and he does it all thanks to the peak point helmet. This immediate move for equality amongst apes in an effort to escape the shackles of the amusement park reveals Ape Escape for what it truly is. The Ape Escape is a workers' revolution, and the peak point helmet is class consciousness. A single flashpoint brings together an entire class of servile people and unites them against their chains. Suddenly the narrative arc of the game, all the pointless hand-wringing about the danger of the emergence of the apes, makes perfect sense, but with a darkly comical twist. In the face of a newly mobile, time-travel-capable working class, what are you doing? Stalking, beating, trapping, and imprisoning them. Spike is a violent agent of global capital, re-establishing a hierarchy that treats monkeys as second-class citizens, alienated from the product of their labour. Which I guess in this case is dancing at a circus, but bear with me here. This is the true genius of Ape Escape. The core loop of the game that seemed so smart 5 paragraphs ago is now sinister. The gentle carrot on a stick of cool new gadgetry takes on a different tone when you consider that each of these is a new, more efficient tool for violent suppression. From handheld weapons to remote offensive measures to elaborate surveillance systems. And it doesn't stop there. Towards the end of the game, you're encouraged to capture monkeys with a tank. A tank! The encouragement is key, though. For all of Spike's sociopathy, and there's a lot, it would be wrong for us to stop here. Indeed, essentially everything that happens in the game can be traced back to one person. The Professor. He designed the peak point helmet. He built the time machine. He sends Spike through time to stop Spectre. He arms Spike for his task and convinces him of its value, all the while criticizing Spectre for using the intelligence that he made for him. That's not all either. Having made the critical, inevitable mistake of giving the new working class the tools to liberate themselves, he takes extra special care in making sure that he can re-establish order. To ensure that Spike does exactly what he wants, he creates for him a thin veneer of power fantasy within a hellish and existentially horrifying imprisonment. The time station to which Spike is confined has 3 corners. In the largest one lies the Time Portal, a gateway to countless centuries of worker suppression by your hand. Another option is a training room, in which Spike can hone his body and his mind for their singular purpose, and familiarize himself with the tools of the trade. In a sick joke, the final option is a games room. A fun distraction, you might think, but the selection of games on offer tells another story. They present Spike with thin, ghoulish imitations of fun with his friends, or worse yet, exaggerated propaganda depicting the ape society that might come to be should Spike drag his heels. And that's it. That's his entire existence until the apes are stopped. Uphold the mission, sharpen himself as a tool for his superiors, or languish in a nightmare fantasy. Faced with these alternatives, is it any wonder that Spike complies with the Professor? Forwards then, to class war. Under the boot heel of corporate invention, the revolution falls. All throughout history, monkeys are stripped of the intelligence granted them by their helmets, the identities they have carved out for themselves and crystallized in the form of colored shorts, and the independence granted them by rising up. Spike's tactics are brutal and efficient. One by one, his targets are isolated, incapacitated, and captured. Look at them! Some of them don't even fight back. Sometimes they just run, visibly terrified of you, only stopping to flail wildly as a last resort. Some simply stand still, paralyzed with fear. They know what fate awaits them on the other side of the time net, the cruel oblivion of captivity. Though the apes escaped as a single, united people, each of them is captured, alone. Having suckered you into gleefully enacting the oppression of these people, towards the end the game really starts to rub in what you've done. By the time you make it to the game's later levels, the ultimate nefarious plan of the apes has become obvious. nothing more than the mass production of helmets. You find them operating powerlifters to carry crates of the things around. The apes have automated their labour and leveraged this to bring the revolution to the countless apes across the globe. They have cast aside the need to work for profit and have instead turned technology to lighten the burden on the whole species. Their revolution is powerfully intersectional. You, of course, do not realize the value of this, and your technology made for war destroys theirs made for liberation. Somehow, you finally catch enough monkeys. Then, the final stages of the game begin. Katie and the Professor are captured and taken to Specter's headquarters, Specterland. This final stage is Specter's worst fears writ large. He's seen you coming. History itself has foretold his defeat at every turn. His last effort to convince you not to imprison him is to show you what keeps him awake at night. His memories of the servile life to which he cannot bear to return. This nightmare existence, spending your whole life trapped in a cage, barely managing to stay alive as you jump and dance for the amusement of others, pretending to live in 19th century America? This is what Spectre has come from, and to what he knows, in the back of his mind, he will soon return. In showing Spike this, he hopes to appeal to any shred of humanity Spike might have left in his heart. But you, the player, have helped the Professor to ensure that no such shred exists. Once Spike has rescued his friend and her employer, Spectre gives up on the sympathy plan and decides to go on the offensive. With a wave of his hand, a totally sick space fortress explodes out of the ground, and he demands you go and challenge him on it. Quite why he does this is anyone's guess. I suppose some of the guilt from the events of the revolution must be getting to him. So you go into space, and not once but twice defeat him in single combat. You defeat him at his peak, as a titan of an ape. Incidentally, this part really hammers home how monstrous you are by framing the camera as Spectres, so you can see exactly what it's like to have a monster without morals like Spike bearing down on you. Just before the absolute final confrontation, Spike and Spectre have a candid, face-to-face conversation. Confronted by the reality that he will soon be back in captivity, Spectre ruminates briefly on the time he spent there. He asks how his handler has been coping since he left. Spike, obviously, takes this opportunity to taunt him and tell him to come back, as long as he says sorry. Everyone will forgive him. Spectre tells Spike what the game has been telling you the entire time, that Spike is the true aggressor here, and that if he truly considers Spectre a villain, then he cannot be far from villainy himself. Drunk on ideology, Spike can offer only this in his defense.
I'd never do anything harmful or destructive.
I'd never do anything harmful or destructive. I'd never do anything harmful or destructive. I'd never do anything harmful or destructive.
With no mech to defend himself this time, Spectre falls into the time net, and the game plays its final card. A hard cut to Spectre, helmetless, in the arms of the man who has owned him his whole life. Look at this image. This is the bleakest possible ending for Ape Escape. Spectre has been lobotomized and returned to captivity, staring at the world listlessly, unshackled but robbed of the camaraderie that inspired him to revolt. His taste of freedom is over, and the people he freed are back where they should be, on the bottom of the ladder. You did this. You crushed this dream. Because an old man promised he'd give you shiny toys if you did. And as the credits roll, the game asks you if you can live with that. There are a couple of sequels too. I've only played the first one, and most of the major themes of the original either vanish or remain unchanged and uninterrogated, to the point where it seems like the creators didn't even know they were there. I can't imagine that's the case though. On the flip side, the minigames in this one include a five-a-side football game in which you can play as the monkeys, and I've spent more time playing it than the rest of Ape Escape 2. So, swings and roundabouts, I guess? Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please tell a friend about it. If you liked it a little more, you can click the like button down there to tell YouTube you liked it. If you really liked it, you can subscribe to this channel or follow me on Twitter to find out when I'm making the next one. Hopefully I'll see you then.